exists to set standards for the regulation of our day-to-day engagements, for the resolution of disputes, and for the enforcement of our rights within the legal space. When it's brought to the context of marriages, the law regulates how marriages ought to be contracted and how same can be challenged by way of validity, or how marriages could even be stopped from the very beginning or before they actually happen. Today on Law Express, we discuss caveats to Christian and other marriages. My name is Noella Seidu. Don't go away. This is Law Express.
Annie Emefa is a private legal practitioner. In her free time, she enjoys singing and engaging in peer education. Richard Odum Mensah is a private legal practitioner. In his leisure time, he enjoys playing lawn tennis. Noella Seidu. She's a private legal practitioner and a consistent member of our 3-lawyer panel on the show every week. She also doubles as the host of the show. She likes to play tennis and read.
Marriage is a very important institution in Ghana, in any state, because marriage forms the bedrock of families. Without marriages, there will not be families. Without families, there will not be societies. And without a society, there will not be a nation. And so every state, including Ghana, is interested in how marriages are contracted. Who can marry? What are the processes that can lead to marriage? Who can even bless marriage? Which parties can even contract marriage? And Ghana as a country have also made laws as to how all of these things can be done. And very importantly, if you have an objection to some people getting married, which processes can take place to object to two parties getting married, which is our focus on today, talking about caveat.
Looking at marriages, in this discussion, we are actually concentrating on what we are calling marriages under the Part 3 of the Marriages Act of Ghana. So we're actually looking at the Christian marriage and other monogamous marriages, which is one man to one woman marriages. Now, under our laws, we need to understand that there are 3 authorities under which such marriages can be celebrated. So we are looking at the registrar's certificate. We are also looking at the marriage officer's certificate, and then we are looking at the special license.
Yeah, in further laying the foundation for this conversation, since Richard already mentioned the fact that our focus is on caveats, the ways you can legally challenge the celebration of a marriage, we still have to look at the divisions of our country into marriage districts. So this country has been divided into marriage districts. I want to believe they fall within the political districts as well. Yes, and each district, has appointed a registrar of marriages, like you mentioned, which is one of the authorities under which marriage can be solemnized. So this registrar of marriages may have deputies where applicable, where required, and normally the criteria for appointing these people by the Minister of Interior is that you should be fit and proper. I don't know what fit and proper means within the contemplation of the law for the purpose, but that's what it provides.
So if you want to engage in a Christian and monogamous marriage, you have 3 options. One, you can go under the registrar certificate, or you can go under the marriage officer's certificate, or special license. And so starting from the registrar certificate, which I think is more common, every district or municipal metropolitan assembly has an officer who is called a registrar of marriage. His duty is to make sure that people get married. And then
more like to help them get married.
Well,
just to make sure
that's
they
a
get married.
specialty. And so the applicants or you, the two parties who are getting married, one of you or two of you can go to that office of the registrar of marriages. And then you will have to fill a form, what you call the notice of your intention to get married. You fill the form, and practically you should attach an affidavit. An affidavit is you swearing an oath that there's no impediment to you getting married. In that affidavit, you should indicate your name, you should indicate your age, because we want to know that whether you are qualified to marry or not. And they also indicate where you stay, your work or profession. You should also state whether you have been married before or whether you are single. Nowadays, there are so many married people who are getting married again. So we want to know whether you have been married. If you have been married, are you widowed? Are you divorced?
Yeah.
I mean, if you are divorced, you should be able to attach evidence of divorce.
So that could be a divorce certificate
Divorce
or
certificate.
the divorce order from
Yes.
court here.
Yes. And then indicate your relationship with the other party. Because we also want to know whether there is that closeness in terms of family relationship or not. Because that's another important thing we should look out for. So you attach this notice and this affidavit and present it to the registrar of
like
marriage.
to indicate that or confirm that you are not related to the person.
Exactly.
There's no familiar relationship
Exactly.
or relationship born out of affinity, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So once you make that declaration, so they can avoid incestuous unions.
Very, very important.
Okay, you can go on, please.
So when you present the notice and the affidavit to the registrar of marriage, the registrar is required to do two things. Enter your notice in the marriage notice book. So there's a book, it's like
Book of Life.
the book of life. Your name, as they have to enter it, that you have, on this day you came with an application with the intention to get married to A or B. And then tell you that wait after 21 days. After you have also entered it in the book, they have to publish it in a notice board outside the office for 21 days.
So that will be done by the registrar of marriage.
That will be done by the
And then you
registrar of
need
marriage.
21 days to cook it for it to mature,
Yes.
right?
So when we look at people that opt to get their marriages solemnized under the marriage officer's certificate,
Okay.
this particular option is most common in our days with the Christendom.
Okay.
People who want to celebrate their marriages in church.
Yeah.
But on a platform like this, we will also want to educate the public and sound a very interesting note of caution that you must necessarily find out and know that indeed your place of worship has been licensed, duly
Great.
licensed for the purposes of your marriage.
So it's the district chief executive who licenses places of worship for the purposes of celebration of marriages.
Yes.
And to assist you with your presentation, marriage officers who are the ministers of the various religious groups are also licensed by the Minister of Interior. So these are two different places.
Yes.
And marriage officers, that is the ministers who are licensed to officiate marriages, are limited to districts.
Yes.
So a marriage officer licensed in probably Wa district can't drive to Accra to come and officiate Richard's marriage
Yeah,
in
not at all.
Kaswa. Just so
Why
you can.
Kaswa? Now, Kaswa is
It's a
I don't know.
republic now.
I just wanted the police as far apart as
Yes.
possible.
So the emphasis is that the one blessing the marriage is not anybody who can bless marriage.
or
marriage.
officiate.
Or you can engage in a marriage in any other place. You have to ask, is the place licensed?
Yes, and
Is
it's the marriage officer.
the pastor
Yeah.
licensed to get
So,
married?
yes,
Very, very important.
License.
Licensed to officiate
Officiate.
within that place.
within that district.
Yes.
Yeah.
So first of all, license to officiate simpliciter
Yeah.
and license to officiate within that jurisdiction,
Yes.
because there are two
Yeah.
different steps.
And
Yes.
most
So-
importantly, the place of worship too. So it
Yes.
gives it a third requirement.
Yes.
As far as your option to marry under the marriage officer's
It's good
certificate
we
is
stress on
concerned.
this because this goes straight to the validity of the marriage.
Yes.
You would spend all your money, do everything, but if
Good
these boxes are not ticked, you end up with a very, void marriage.
Yes.
So you need to be very careful, and it's within your right to ask your church, is the pastor licensed? Is the
Place of
place of
worship.
worship licensed?
So, as far as the marriage officer's certificate is concerned, the process kickstarts when the persons that intend to marry, either one of them or both of them, also give notice to this marriage officer of the intention to go ahead with the marriage. And once you give that notice to the marriage officer, it speaks for itself that that is the option you choose to solemnize your marriage under.
With the notice of the intention, if you belong to the same probably place of worship or you live within the same area, I think you can file, it can
a
be
joint
one
notice,
or,
one.
Yes, it can be one notice.
Once you give the notice, now, what is peculiar with this option is what we call the notice for the banns, publication of the banns. So once you have given that notice, and again, all the requirements is spelled out, actually are very necessary here too, because those given the notice should have been of age to be able to marry. Where one is below the marriage age, which is mentioned, then consent, of course, needs to be sought. So you go through that process. Every requirement is still very important, even under this option.
Well, you talked about the publication of bans.
Yeah.
Even under the registrar's authority, you still publish in a different way.
Yes.
It's just this time it is done verbally
Exactly.
in the church, together with the postings that may come along with it.
So it's the reason we are calling this bans and not
Yes.
an ordinary
Notice,
notice.
yeah.
So in effect, they actually do the same thing, except that this one, if it's in the church setting, then this needs to be published 3 Sundays. That is the strict legal requirement. Now, it needs to be published first in English, and if your assembly has peculiar local language to it, Gachi, it needs to be interpreted. Now, the publication can be done by the marriage officer himself, but if not, then he needs to give authority
To whoever.
to
he
whoever is in
delegates to,
charge
yeah.
for the bans to be published. And it must necessarily be done 3 Sundays.
So, church announcers
Yes.
who publish bans
Yeah.
must be formally authorized
Yes.
by the marriage officers
Yes.
to take up that role,
Yeah.
because that is not their duty.
And it is important at this point to state that there is a statutory form, so it's a statutory obligation.
Yeah.
So the evidence of the authority to publish that notice must be shown, for which reason our laws have provided a statutory form so to do. So if you are not able as a marriage officer to do this publication yourself, you necessarily need to fill out these forms authorizing, and that person's name must necessarily be stated in the forms.
In the authority.
Yes, in your
Okay.
authority note, so that the publication is done.
Okay, so, I mean, just because I like the sound of it when these bans are published, I would like to repeat what normally, because people think that the churches decide how the bans are published. There's a statutory form, and those words must be what the marriage officer or whoever is delegated to do that person must necessarily say those words in the publication. So that is another thing. And so this is what you are supposed to hear in church. So I published the banns of marriage between, then you fix in the intended celebrants so you state the place of residence as in the notice they have given you. So you mention if there's a bachelor or a widow or widower, and the name of the intended wife. Okay, then you mention the same things, whether it's a spinster, widower, a widow, sorry. If any of you know cause or just impediment why these 2 persons should not be joined together in holy matrimony, you are to declare it. Then you indicate if this is the first time or the second time or the third time of asking. You will notice the last part, which solicits the impediments or people who have just impediments. It's very peculiar to this publication in the church in this manner, because you would realize that most people erroneously, on the day of the celebration of the marriage, repeat this. By that time, that door is closed. You're just calling for nuisance. So if you attend a wedding and you hear somebody say this again, at that point, this is just superfluous.
I think some just say it for purpose of saying it, but I think now most churches are
Stop.
getting to understand it, and they have stopped
They've
saying
stopped
it
saying
on the
it.
day, because then the point is, if you have any impediment, you should have raised it.
before.
Before.
Yes. So, I mean, this is then not for the fun of it. It is when this is said in the church, 3 different Sundays, that is the period within which, if you have a reason why the people should not be married, the couple or intended couple, that is when you're supposed to raise your objections. Probably to the marriage officer. But let me not go ahead of myself.
So
We'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we now delve into the actual caveats flowing from the wording of the publication of bans within the church space. This is Law Express. Don't go away.
Having discussed all of that, we are saying that sometimes you may have an objection to 2 people getting married. And in terms of maybe their age, maybe one of them doesn't have the required age. I'm sure recently this issue about a chief marrying a 16-year-old girl came about. You may have an objection to that marriage if it's a Christian marriage, or in terms of the relationship.
Was that what happened? Because I got a different sense of that conversation. It was, I hear a customary, whatever.
It was a
Yes.
customary marriage that was being engaged
So
in.
that's different from our Congo
But
now, but
assuming-
you're using the
Yeah.
age
The
bit.
age.
Yes,
Yeah.
assuming such a person, 16, 17-year-old, wants to get married, and you have an objection, there's a way by which you go about it. Or in terms of somebody already being married wants to engage in another marriage. It happens where maybe because of separation, somebody wants to engage in another marriage. You have an objection to
Or
that.
they married in the custom somewhere, and then now are in church, pretending to be single, then they decide to marry somebody new under part 3 of the Marriage Act.
A lot of things happen nowadays. A lot of things are happening nowadays where people are already engaged in marriage, whether custom or ordinance, get married to another person without dissolving the first marriage. That is a grounds to object to this marriage. Or in terms of relationship, affinity or kindred, maybe the person wants to marry somebody who is related to a cousin or a sister, or maybe want to marry your sister-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
It happens. And so these are grounds to object
Some
to.
cultures don't object to that though, but
Well, in Ghana, I don't
we
think
have a
I don't think it's-
definition for affinity, and it's we rule against that, right?
So if you have an objection under the registrar certificate, as we have indicated, when you have filed, we have given the notice and affidavit, the registrar is supposed to publish a notice on his notice board for 21 days. And that is the period for which you are allowed to raise an objection. You would go to the notice board or into the married notice book and write forbidden. That is the basis for your objection, and indicate your name, your place of abode, and state the reason why you're objecting to that marriage.
What next?
So you have to state the reason, and then when it has been properly done so, the registrar of the married that has received this notice of objection, or what you call in law caveat, must refer the whole matter to a justice of the High Court. So it's a very serious matter because we have lower courts, but we want, because marriage is a very important institution, you are making reference to a High Court judge to determine the objection, whether it has good grounds
A
or not.
basis,
Of
yes.
course. And the point is, people can raise flimsy grounds to object to marriage. Some may also be genuine grounds. And so you want a court who is an independent person to go into the matter and determine whether the objection has grounds or not.
But to add to this, you've raised the objection, the courts would hear summarily, meaning they would move on it quickly, not go through a full trial for that. They will invite the caveator to come in, give their evidence. We have to sound a warning. You can't go and just by virtue of the fact that you were jilted by an ex-lover, so you go and prohibit a whole marriage because you are hurt. Because if the judge determines or finds that your caveat was not justified, you will be fined.
So it's important for us to state the grounds for which you can caveat. As we said, breaking hearts, when you have gotten through a broken heart, it can make you do so many things.
Oh, yes.
And so the fact that your heart have been broken by a lady, now the ladies are doing a lot of broken heart.
Okay. I
Doesn't
don't know
gi-
what your sample population is, but
Oh,
we'll
it's
hear
a
it out.
research
But I
that we
think
are.
the men
It's
are
a
more.
research. You cannot go and object on the basis that the person jilted you or disappointed you, or maybe you have a child with that person.
Yes, because having a child is not enough to stop another's marriage.
So you can object, one, in terms of age. The person is underage, and as I said, the required age is 21 years. But if you are between 18 to 21 years, you must get the consent
Of your
the
parents or lawful guardians. Yeah.
or the person has been married before, or is under
Has a subsisting marriage.
subsisting marriage,
Yeah.
either custom or
Any form of marriage.
any form of marriage. That would be a good basis to object to him contracting another marriage. Or maybe because of the relationship, as I
They are
said,
related
they are related by blood,
or affinity.
affinity.
Okay.
As I said, you can't go and marry your sister-in-law or your mother-in-law. I mean, you can't eat from the same pot. You shouldn't eat from the same pot, in quote. And so these are good bases to object to marriage. But the fact that he gave you a promise and has disappointed you,
Yeah, you can, I mean, if you have a valid reason to act on that promise, there are other avenues for you to
Avenues
have
to-
your matter
yeah.
resolved
Yeah.
rather than to stop or prohibit their marriage.
But again, on the bit of the consent, it could also be, you could also come across situations where the person who needs the consent neither has a parent, legal guardian. Sometimes they're even out of the country. But you see, the law makes room, so you can have a superior court judge. We can also have, you can apply, a magistrate can give consent
On
after he has
behalf
looked
of-
on behalf. Even a marriage registrar can do that.
Yeah.
So the door is not shut when your parents don't live within the jurisdiction or there is nobody close
But
to
if your
you or
parents
legal
don't live within
guardian.
the jurisdiction, you don't have any other family. Like, how did you just show up as a human
Yes.
being on an island?
well, I mean, you can travel, people can travel from outside
Yeah.
the country, and come to Ghana.
You
to
see,
contract
I
marriage.
say this because in Ghana, though monogamous marriages, okay, or marriages under Part 3 of the Marriages Act are not premised on customary marriages. You see, you do not need to have been married at custom to have a valid marriage under the Marriages Act,
Oh, yes.
okay? So you can just pick up your few friends, follow the law, and go and sign.
Exactly.
It's Christian marriages that insist that you should have fulfilled the custom. And this is something that they actually inquire about,
Yeah.
even through the counseling and all of that, to be sure that your family supports that, the marriage. So in that kind of case, wouldn't it open room where you married in maybe Las Vegas, where it's easy to just go and marry in just minutes?
Really. I
And
didn't know
then
that.
you sneak into Ghana and say, oh, I don't have any parents, I don't have anybody here. Then you get a magistrate to help with consent, then you marry again.
No,
Well-
but I believe that once you've entered that arena to seek consent, the game, the rules of our game, once the court terrain is concerned, is evidence. Because whoever is giving that consent would have satisfied himself
Yeah.
of putting very necessary issues on the ground.
It's still relative.
So that happens.
We've
Yeah.
sampled people's opinion on this topic.
Great.
Let's take a listen. We react to that, and then we come back to the procedure for caveats under the marriage officer's mandate.
Caveats in marriages, from my perspective, I think they are the restrictions, conditions, or maybe warnings that is attached to marriage proposals. And in our traditional homes like this, they can be like you need to produce 4 or 5 kids before they can consider your marriage as a valid one or invalid. They feel you should get this number of kids before they can be like your marriage is valid. So in our Ghanaian society, in some ethnic groups, they think for you to be legally married or for you to be traditionally married, you need to produce like 4 or 3 kids before they can say that your marriage is indeed valid or not.
So caveat to marriage is basically an injunction that is placed on marriage. And most of the times, these caveats are placed on marriage when the marriage lacks the basic requirements by law. So sometimes the caveat contains a 21-day notice that is given to either of the parties to prevent the marriage or the marriage certificate from being issued to the married couples by the registrar until one or both parties are heard. And if it all happens that the hearing goes in their favor, then the marriage certificate can be handed over to them.
Clearly, it looks like issues on caveats are not issues that the public really understands or are well versed with. But basically, what we need to say is that when we say caveat, that's only a legal terminology. Now, in plain ordinary language, we are only talking about objection.
Yeah.
Objection to a marriage. And like we said, you must have reasonable grounds for coming. So as my colleague has earlier on discussed, the process under the registrar's certificate. Now, when you opt to go under the marriage officer's certificate, and particularly what we see in our churches these days, I keep making reference to it because it's become a thing and is one of the trendiest types of marriages we are seeing with glamorous pictures all over. And one thing we need to understand, that the period for the publication of bans is the actual period in law to register your objection or displeasure. Now, coming into the church and making noise and distracting the service, I call those dramatics that has affected us by way of the movies we watch.
I think from the Vox Pop, they have an idea what probably it could be, but they do not fully appreciate how it works.
Yeah.
And that is what probably fits into what you have called dramatics, right?
Yeah. During that period, if you have an objection, you put it in writing.
Are you now talking about the caveats within the space of the marriage officers' mandate?
Yes.
Okay, so you're looking at marriage, Christian marriages.
Yes, particularly.
Yes.
So within the period, you are able to write your objection. This time you put this in writing. Unlike the registrars where you write forbidden only. You have to put this in writing. It should have your name. It should tell us your address. That is where you live. We should know the grounds, the reasons you are objecting to the marriage must all be stated. And this must be presented to the marriage officer or to the person given the authority to publish the bans. So this is very important. And then once you have submitted this to them, then the law imposes it on the marriage officer to also note in his books that such information or objection has come to his attention. And quickly, there is an obligation on him legally to also refer same to a judge of the High Court.
And until this
within his
caveat
jurisdiction.
is removed or dealt with, that marriage certificate will never be issued.
Issued, not at all.
One of the people who spoke in the Vox Pop mentioned the fact that a caveat is like an injunction. I kind of agree because in operation or by operation, once you take that step, everything comes to a halt
Yes.
until it's dealt with.
That is true. So that until the grounds for the caveat is determined by the court, the marriage would not come on. And when it comes to the court, I think there are two procedures. The judge, the High Court judge, the caveat has been referred to, can summary determine the grounds and say, okay, the caveat has come, I've looked at the reason, I don't think that this reason stands, and throw it away. Or if he thinks that he must go into the matter, they must invite both parties, the caveator and the parties who intend to marry. And then he will then go into the matter. Now the burden is on you, the caveator, the one who has raised objection, to substantiate and prove why the caveat should stand. The burden is on you to determine, convince the court why the marriage should not be celebrated. If you fail to substantiate or, convince the court would dismiss the caveat. And the law says that when it is under the marriage office, the registrar's certificate, he will have to, the judge can cancel the forbidden
Forbidden on it,
in the marriage notice book. and that will pave way for the
And
marriage
that
to be celebrated.
signifies the
Yeah.
removal of the caveat.
Yeah.
And the danger is that if your caveat is dismissed, the court may award costs
Against
you, the caveat. So you should be careful. You should probably seek legal advice before you even enter a caveat into a marriage.
Don't go trying to be
Yes.
emotional about things and just.
And again, you see, cost must be awarded for the inconvenience that you have caused the parties that intend to marry. And another important thing we need to know at this point is that once your caveat is dismissed, the determinations made by the High Court they are final.
Yeah.
As far as the issues relating to those two
So you
are
can say
concerned.
that I'm going to appeal it.
and apply for stay of execution.
Oh no, these are final. And so once the court determines that you have no case, that ends it for you.
Let's go to the drama. I don't like drama, but you like drama. Okay.
I'm
then
sure she does.
No, it's a beautiful spectacle to watch.
It will help us situate the conversation in practical terms for our viewers to come along. So you've seen this person, you've decided this is your person you want to marry. You may or may not have fulfilled your customary requirements. That is your problem. You take steps, either through the church or the registrar's route. The banns are published. Nobody says anything. I'm just painting a picture.
Yeah.
Then on the day of the actual celebration of the marriage, somebody shows up with 2 children and a pregnancy to boot and is screaming, saying that the marriage has to stop. Or there's a guy, broken-hearted guy, screaming in the corner saying he spent everything he has on this girl's training and so she
Baby
shouldn't be
school
allowed.
fees.
Yes, taking care of her family and all, and so she shouldn't be allowed. At that point, in my opinion, this person should be arrested for public nuisance and for inconveniencing everybody there.
You are actually very right, because that action alone is actually disturbing of the public peace, for which reason they should be. What is happening is that we are more emotional when it comes to these issues.
And we
because
like salacious things.
Exactly.
We like drama.
Yeah.
At this point, nobody is looking at the effect on the couple and the fact that if it comes back that this allegation is even false,
False.
what it does to their reputation and
the
everything.
image, yeah.
Nobody cares about that. Everybody just wants to know, why did this person come? And where it's a woman with kids and a pregnancy, there's even a conclusion drawn by people there that, oops, this must be another wife or
Another
somebody
wife,
that was
yeah.
promised. And automatically they go straight. It could be, yes, a woman with kids and all, but her, caveat is all intended caveat is based on the fact that maybe you are related to the woman.
Woman, yeah.
But you know how we process.
So two views on that. One, the one causing the drama at that stage is late in objecting to the marriage because the bans will have been published or notice have been given, the certificate has been issued. So at that stage,
It's just a party. It's a formality.
but there's an option for you. Probably, maybe the person is married to you and is going
Yes.
to marry another person. The option is that wait, let them get married. You can then file a suit against the married couple for the annulment of the marriage because probably, as I said, you were not qualified to have engaged
But you see,
in that marriage.
how many people want to take this new step? Because by the time this person has chosen somebody new, it's evidence that they don't want to be with you. If you file to annul their marriage, no problem. At that point, it's not even a valid. You can only file to challenge the validity of the marriage.
Exactly.
Now, once you file to challenge the validity and the court pronounces that this is not a valid marriage because they are with you, he will just turn around and file to divorce you.
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah.
instead
And come back.
of going to the church to go and cause drama because you think that you have grounds to stop the
When
marriage.
they do this, you see, you have to look at the fact that they are coming from a place of emotions.
Yes.
They are not doing that because they want their partner to divorce them or leave them properly to do the right thing. They are doing that because they want to save their marriage.
But
They want to be the person in place of the new choice.
the argument is that one, don't marry this person because probably you're married to me and that this marriage should not go on when it is late because the period for which you could have raised objection has passed. But I'm saying that instead of going to cause all this drama, being arrested. Or
Yes.
sometimes people send soldiers to guard their marriage because
Really?
yes.
Security
You
officers.
provide
We've seen a
security.
number.
Wait.
Armed soldier men to. When you
I
come
haven't
in-
seen that in
When
action
you come
yet.
across
Yes.
distraction, you'll be beaten. There's an option for you.
That's not even legal. Like, why should you get military? Is not for that purpose.
Oh, I'm just saying. But when you know that
You have
maybe,
issues.
There are issues around.
Unless it's a military officer's wedding.
Or not
And then
necessarily.
he calls his friends to come and help.
Sometimes you have to take
necessarily.
proactive steps.
Because you know what you've done. It clearly
Exactly.
shows that you have some skeletons
you have to
somewhere.
provide-
If you're a
security.
man and you have 4 baby mamas, you should expect drama.
Well, you make sure you have sensible baby mamas who would not come in and cause
Well,
drama.
unfortunately, it's not the case
Anything can
usually.
happen.
It's
So-
time
so-
for another break
Okay.
now, okay?
Yeah.
You hold your thoughts. We will continue on this. I know Richard likes his drama. We'll give you your chance to explore your drama. This is Law Express. Don't go away.
The point I was making is that instead of going to cause these distractions, which you can be arrested for causing nuisance, the option is that if you have good grounds, wait for the marriage to be celebrated. You can file a case for the annulment of the marriage. So the drama is not necessary because one, you are late, but there's an option for you to file a case.
Just find a lawyer. That's what I would say. But to be very safe, once you have notice, so this will work for people who probably didn't have any notice of the publication.
Yeah.
So maybe you were outside the jurisdiction. They move to another area to do their publication. Maybe you are in Koforidua and the person is in Bolga. You might not know unless you know people there who would tell you. So, yeah, you just didn't have notice, and then you can go with the options you've mentioned. But to be safe, we can't say this enough. What you have to do is to make sure that when the publication is ongoing, so for instance, they publish the first time in church, if it's
Yeah.
another marriage officer, you write it down. If you can read and write, get somebody to assist you, your name, the reasons, everything, and give it to the marriage officer. You'll be heard.
Yeah.
And then you can actively or quickly, effectively stop the marriage from going on. Then you win better that way, right?
Yes, yes. And also for those who create the drama situation, I believe that some is the satisfaction that they are disgracing their ex-partners.
Oh, okay.
But I say that when you put yourself that way, you also put your own self in harm's way, because you've just shown to the world sometimes that you are capable of certain things. Probably you would have gotten a suitor under that ceremony, and that is lost.
Probably
So-
the suitor will like you just because you can shake up the space. You never know.
So you also have another option, particularly if it's a situation of being a jilted ex-lover. Yes, you have other avenues. So speak to a lawyer. You could take out an action of breach of promise to marry if you have
that is
what
whether
it
it's a
takes to.
valid promise.
Yeah.
But let's say the person leaves you for a flimsy reason, maybe you smile too much, and he didn't promise you anything. Yeah, I know somebody who left his girlfriend because he said the lady smiles too much. So
Quite weird.
if that is your reason for jilting her and there were no other promises, you didn't go to any mall to kneel to give her a promise ring, you didn't meet any family members to promise that you'll be coming to marry her, then she's just left with sour grapes, okay? And this is where they get emotional and try to do this.
Yeah.
Life is hard. Life has, uncertain things. So
It's unpredictable.
Take time, yeah.
So, if you do not have any valid basis to stop it, just take it like that.
Yeah.
You know, we have a few questions coming by way of social media handles.
Created this blog for many years. It sponsored her and her family with my little income as an up-and-coming young man. Just yesterday, someone in her church called me to say that they announced at church an intended marriage between her and a wealthy banker in church. I am so hurt. I plan to disrupt the wedding, but I am not that strong. The man she intends to marry and his friends are always in the gym and appear very strong. Is there any other option for me? I do not want to be wounded physically or emotionally.
Oh no, a macho man has collected this girl.
So,
Well, that's unfortunate.
yeah. So for our dear gentleman, you see, if he was given those things, supporting her education, in exchange for a certain promise or agreement to marry, then we would say that he probably would have an option.
Listen, he
After,
supported,
yeah.
from the question, he supported her and her family.
Yeah.
So by the time the family is accepting these courtesies, I mean, is he just a philanthropist?
Yeah, but
They know, and there would be that you're accepting. This is the consideration in exchange for marriage, right?
well, his point is, can he object
Object to the marriage.
Yeah.
on the day of the marriage or cause drama?
Yeah, he
So
talked
they-
about
yeah.
doing drama.
Yes.
But so the issue is, does he have enough grounds? Sponsoring a lady or sponsoring the family, is it enough grounds to stop a marriage or object to a marriage? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Unfortunately, my friend.
You cannot lawfully stop
Stop a
marriage
marriage.
based on how much you've spent
Spent.
on
On a woman.
somebody or a man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
which is nice. I mean, spending on a man is
The
better.
good thing about his situation, however, is that he's still within the time period. There are publishing bans.
Yes.
He was called and he was told that there was an announcement in church.
Yeah.
So quickly, instead of waiting to be beaten up by this man and his macho friends, probably it's better to go the legal way.
Yes.
Of course, as I said, you have to seek legal advice even before you enter caveat. The question is, does he have grounds to enter into a proper caveat?
Right.
You could enter the caveat, but at the end of the day, the caveat will be
Will fail.
dismissed, and then costs
Cost
will be awarded
awarded.
against you.
So it's almost impossible to
jeopardy.
use just a paragraph of a question to understand further. So we would say get to a lawyer close by, let them try to get the real reason or basis for your caveat
Yeah.
or your real reason for planning to stop the wedding. If there's a valid one, you'll be taught, like we explained,
Yes.
to put it in writing, indicate your name, address, your reasons, and
reasons,
everything.
yeah.
And then you send it to that church, to
Yeah.
whoever published the
The
bans,
bans.
most probably the officer,
Yeah.
the officiating
Marriage
minute,
officer.
the marriage officer, and then it will be forwarded to court. If, on the other hand, this legal advisor finds that you don't have a legit reason, they will advise you to go and get a therapist.
Or if you have enough grounds to sue her for promise,
Breach of
promise to marry.
That could be another option.
If, but
But if the only
Unfortunately-
reason is just because you spent so much,
Much
money,
money.
trust me, it was
So-
just charity you did.
Hard
Exactly. It's
earned money.
gratuitous given.
Unfortunately
in my
for him, he has
opinion.
lost out to a banker.
Yeah, a rich banker was
Yeah.
qualified. That's sad.
And a macho man.
And a macho man in addition.
My mother-in-law to be says she will not allow our marriage and has sent a letter of protest to our church after our first publication of bans there. She has not communicated any valid reason. She says I am too short for her daughter. What can I do?
Wow, that's very interesting.
That's
Mine was
wild.
rather wild.
That is very interesting. Now, this is my take. The mother can object if there is issue about age, in terms of getting consent of the parents. That is, if you're under 21 years, then the parents or somebody who you must get the consent from can object on that basis. But to say that you don't like your would-be daughter-in-law or son-in-law because he is short, is not enough grounds to stop a marriage or object to a marriage. And so my view, again, of course, is maybe for them to seek a legal lawyer who can advise the parties or the persons who are going to get married. But once the caveat has been entered, they have to be referred to a judge. And as I said, a judge may look at it summarily and dismiss it without even inviting the parties. I don't want to prejudice any matter that may go to court, but to say that you don't like your son-in-law or daughter-in-law because he has height challenge, I don't want to say short. In my humble view, would not be enough grounds to stop the marriage. But once the caveat has been entered, the judge will it has to be referred to a judge, High Court judge, who will look at it and determine whether the objection or the caveat is strong enough to stop the marriage.
Yeah. What I find is that churches like to be promoters of peace. So in a situation like that, once they receive the notice of caveat in writing, they are likely to call them to try to resolve the matter, such that when it's eventually or when it's referred, probably you just go to court and then withdraw whatever your caveat is without it having to be heard summarily. But discriminating against somebody on grounds of height, I think is a bit much, especially as the mother is not the one who gets to marry. You have had your chance at life. Your daughter has also decided that it's her choice for her journey.
Yeah.
You don't get to live with this man. So I don't honestly get the whole concern here.
I, in my opinion, would just like to nail this straight on the head. Because for somebody to be vertically challenged, as I call it, or describe
That's what it is. It's not a challenge. It's just different.
No, we try to these days be nice with our words. That a mother-in-law to be would caveat a marriage only on the basis that her son-in-law to be does not have, I believe, her preferred height for him. I think that if these are the only reasons, she is not likely, so I'm using my words advisedly, not likely to succeed on the caveat. And at this point, the church needs to also understand that as the avenue for promoting peace, though, there are still laws that govern this type of marriage strictly. And so they would also want to look at referring this to the High Court so that the laws of Ghana can appropriately apply.
And I think that is a very interesting proposition. But going to get married to your wife and your mother-in-law doesn't support you, a very dangerous and difficult situation.
You know,
so
there are legal provisions as to how marriage ceremonies ought to be done in churches. I mean, there are some parameters that must be covered, the registration, all of that. But because it's Christian marriages, they tend to be a blend.
Yes.
You realize that Catholic marriages are unique, very unique, such that though you can go to court to have a divorce done, you still need some authorization from a higher person, probably the Pope, I think, to validate your divorce.
Really?
Yes. So it's a very interesting space when you look at how the law interfaces with religion. And there's one thing that sticks out particularly. You realize that officiating ministers in church will announce that who gives this woman in marriage to this man in marriage. I try to find the basis for that at that point, because you've met all the statutory requirements to have a ripe ceremony. What if the father says, no, I do not give this woman?
I mean, at
that point during the service.
I have changed my mind this minute.
And have you collected everything required at custom to give your consent? I try to find a place for that.
I honestly look at those and I think that sometimes they are part of the things we do as out of religious beliefs.
So it's part of the ritual,
yes, not necessarily the legal rudiments of it, because legally up to that point, everything is okay for these guys to go ahead with the marriage.
Yeah.
Because if at that moment the father decides that he does not consent, the publication of bans, the period for objecting is gone. So I believe that sometimes it's also the public show of what they try to say. You realize that this is a marriage where families are united. It's just the public show of it, but not because the legal requirements.
Okay. No. There is also this requirement, apart from the valid registration of the place of worship and the licensing of the officiating minister, that the marriage ought to be celebrated between the hours of 8 o'clock in the forenoon, that's 8 a.m., and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can't go and celebrate marriage in your church at 7 p.m., for instance. It has to be within these hours as stipulated by the law.
Yeah.
So if you're just doing that, then probably it's just a blessing, and you do not intend to rely on it as anything else.
It's important we should distinguish between blessing of a marriage and marriage, or contracting a marriage under, the Marriages Act.
Yeah.
They are two distinct. As for the blessing, no publication, no bans.
You just do what you want.
You just get people to bless it. That's we are blessing probably your customary marriage which you have contracted. But for a marriage properly so called, under what we call ordinance of Christian marriage, there are clear procedures you must follow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you
And
have
apart
issues.
from you having to work within the 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. time given, you need the presence of 2 or more witnesses, okay? And these are witnesses for the actual marriage, so your witnesses,
Yeah.
okay? And besides the officiating minister and the other guests.
Yes.
So you can have people who come in, your schoolmates and all, but they may not be your designated witnesses. These witnesses are those that maybe after just before the marriage certificate is signed, you know, when the couple dances out and goes to the pastor's office, that is where those witnesses come to work. They sign as well to support the fact that
The witness.
they've witnessed this whole thing and is validly contracted.
And it's very important. And the witnesses my understanding, may not necessarily be family
No, they
members.
do
There's no
not
requirement
necessarily.
that they should be family members.
Yeah.
It could be anyone above
Adults,
fit,
yeah.
sane,
sound mind.
Same.
that's it.
Yeah.
Viewers, we've come to the end of our discussion today on caveats to Christian and other marriages. I was honored to be joined on the panel today by Annie Emefa Fiao and Richard Kwame Odum Mensah. Thank you, Counsel, for coming on the show. Until next time, goodbye. This has been Law Express, and my name is Dwella Seidu.